and they lost their houses. So those who argue that there's the role for government to make sure that we bail out everybody, make sure people have the free stuff if they can't provide it for themselves, it's a failed philosophy. If you look at history and you have humanitarian instincts, which I think all of us have, and I think even those who do harm with bad economic policy had this instinct, they really do believe they're going to help. But if you look at history, you'll find out the freer nations are the most prosperous nations. And this means that the freer and the more prosperous, the better the distribution. And we were the freest and the most prosperous, and we had the largest middle class, and yet now we're suffering the consequences. This is why we are at a turning point. And this is why we have to make a decision. Do we want to follow the advice of the founders and the Constitution and say that the purpose of the Constitution is not to restrain you in any way, it's just to restrain the government? Turned on its head right now because your privacy is no longer protected. The government does everything possible to make sure you don't have any privacy. And what happens to the government? It has become secret. It's supposed to be the other way around. We're supposed to know exactly what our government is doing. At the same time, your privacy should be absolutely protected. That the federal government should be endlessly involved in economics and the policies of overseas does lead to this attack on our personal liberties. And that is the real problem that I think we face. You know, for a long time there's been certain groups in this country that have had discrimination directed at them, and they've suffered consequences from that. To me, the solution is make sure you don't ever discriminate against any one group. But the protection has to be the individual. And if you understand this, if we all want our individual liberty to run our lives and our money as we would treat other people overseas, this means that people would come together, not because we agree on our religious values, our personal values, our social values, or whatever, but we come together because the item is liberty. The item is freedom of choice on how we want to run our own personal lives. For that to work, that means that not only we understand it when it looks at personally, we want our freedom and we want to be left alone, but you have to be willing to leave other people alone too. And if they do things or run their lives differently, you can't say, oh, I don't like the way they run their lives. I don't like the way they spend their money, so we better take care of them when they're making mistakes. It doesn't work that way. But the other thing that is necessary for this to work is if we have our freedom and freedom of choice and responsibility, that if we don't do well, if we mess up, you have to assume responsibility for that as well. The good news is that there's no reason why we have not arrived at a turning point. Because we have been slipping and sliding and giving up on our liberties and turning it over to the special interests, destroying our currency and running amok on with our foreign policy. But today, more and more people are recognizing government is not the solution. Paper money is not the solution to sound money. Foreign intervention is not the solution to peace and prosperity. And it's a large number of people. It's not a couple. I've been talking about this and trying to spread a message even back in the 70s. And there were few people interested, but today there's a large number. And I think what has happened is, of course, the end stages of the system that we've had for nearly 100 years is becoming evidence. The government, no matter how well-intended they might be, those who want to run our lives, the money's gone, we are bankrupt, and the end of that is we're at that end right now. So what we need to do is to understand that there is a solution to that. And the message now is there aren't a few. There was a remnant in society. There's always a remnant in society, no matter how bad as the system gets. There's always a remnant who remembers the better things and the proper role. I think of Solzhenitsyn. He was born when the revolution started in Russia and the Soviet Union. And he was raised in that authoritarian, totalitarian state. And by the time we got to know something about Solzhenitsyn, he was well educated. He was educated in the classics. He was a religious person. He spoke fluent English in spite of living under tyranny that he had to live under. So there's always that group out there, and we never know where they are and what's happening. But they have been suppressed for so long because there's been no energy and no need and no consensus. But there's something else going on. Is this message of liberty is being very well endorsed by the young people. And that is... people because we do quite well with the young people, those from 18 to 30. But if you happen to be over 30, that's okay. Freedom truly does bring people together. There is just no doubt about it. If you understand this, just if we can accept the notion that we will use freedom differently, there's no reason in the world we can't come together defending the cause of liberty and recognizing and being willing to accept others the way they want to live. And just remember that if you legalize the freedom of choice in our personal habits and the way we spend money, even if you don't like it, it doesn't mean you have to endorse what they do. You know, if somebody practices religion that you don't believe in, or they don't want to practice religion at all, in a free society, who cares? You know? But of course, if we want to change things, we have a responsibility for ourselves. We have a responsibility to change things through our family and through education, but never with the use of force and the use of guns and the use of government to say, you will do it this way and that way. It never works. We had a taste, which no other country ever had, of liberty. And liberty and the ideas of freedom have been around for hundreds, if not thousands of years, and they have been growing. And we had the best. But right now, it's up for grabs. I am optimistic because of the enthusiasm that I have seen in the recognition that there is a great need that if we do the right thing and re-emphasize the importance of individual liberty, understanding where this liberty comes from, and that it's a humanitarian philosophy, that it is the best way to take care of people. If you want to strive for virtue and excellence, which should be a goal in our lives, governments can't do that. If they do, they destroy our liberties. So we have to assume this responsibility. We were told by our founders, if we are not a moral nation, a good constitution will not do us much good. So there is a lot of personal responsibility and belief and conviction in an understanding how the marketplace works. So in that regard, I would say we are at a turning point, and there's every reason to believe that if we do our job and spread this message, we will all do quite well. Thank you very much.